So here's a quick agenda. What to expect. First, we're going to spend some time talking about what is really going on when you are going through a relationship loss, because it impacts us on so many different levels, emotionally, obviously, but psychologically, physically even. And it is incredibly empowering. I've seen it time and time again when people are like, oh, like that's what's happening. All of a sudden they feel more in control of the process. They have more direction. They have more clarity. They feel less like something is being done to them almost, and more in control of the process. So that is one of my hopes for you. We're going to dig into that. And then we'll also certainly be talking about the stages of healing, the next steps forward, so that you leave here today with an actual plan. Along the way, I'm going to be teaching you a very powerful strategy to help you feel better, like today, just in terms of how to get grounded, manage some of the big feelings that are going on. You're going to get that. But then we're also going to be talking about the things that I've learned over the years that make a difference in people's trajectory through this. Like there are predictable mistakes that are very easy to make that can wind up getting people stuck. You're going to get visibility into what these are so that you do not have to do them. You could just go on the happy path where you can move through this process productively and come out the other side in a good place. And then definitely you're going to be spending some time at the end addressing your questions. And so if there's anything that is coming up for you as I'm talking, go ahead, share them in the chat right here. I have it open and I will be paying attention. And then as we get to the end, we're going to dive into these in depth. But also this is going to be interactive. I don't want this to be just me talking at you. I want you to be participating and thinking about your own experience. And so all along the way, we're going to be checking in with each other. Okay, so quick introduction here if we have not met yet. I am Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby. My background, I am a licensed psychologist. I am a marriage and family therapist, a board certified coach. I am a clinical supervisor of other therapists. And more recently, this is a huge passion of mine these days, I actually am a therapist educator, teaching therapists how to become credentialed coaches, because coaching psychology is very different than what many of us learn and is oftentimes a more productive path for not all clients, but some of them. And so you're going to be hearing some of those coaching differences from me as we're going through this. And then I am also the host of the Love, Happiness, and Success podcast. I don't know if you've had a chance to catch the podcast yet, but we talk about many things on this podcast. It is multidimensional. Our lives are about more than one thing. So we're talking about personal growth, relationships, career, also certainly heartbreak recovery. I have a ton of episodes on different facets of healing after heartbreak, and even a whole content collection on my website, Growing Self. After this event, I'll be sure to send you a detailed email with a link to that as well so that you have access to all of that. Okay, but prior to all of this, I was not always a psychologist. Back in the day, I too went through my own horrible heartbreak experience, and that informed part of what I am bringing you today. So here's a picture of me with my family, my parents, my sister. I am probably 17 in this photo. And the day that this picture was taken, I don't know if you can see it on my face or not, I can see it, but I was devastated. I was a mess. I remember putting on that outfit, like going to get our pictures taken, like, and just like, I've to this day, I have never felt so awful as I did at that time of my life. And one of the hardest times about that for me is I didn't have any direction, and navigating complexities, like that's being in high school, right? Like you're trapped in the same environment as these people. And I felt like nobody understood my friends. I mean, also 17-year-old kids, like, what are they going to tell me? And my parents were limited in their insight into like direct, but they did send me to a therapist, and well-intentioned, absolutely. So I started going to see this therapist, and nice lady. I think she meant well. And I also remember sitting in my car after some of these therapy sessions, just again, sobbing my eyes out because not only was I going through this terrible experience, but this woman that I was talking to, I was not helping. Like I didn't feel better as a result. I felt like she didn't really understand me. And it was kind of like, yeah, what is wrong with you that you're taking this as hard as you are? It was a little bit of the vibe. And so I just, this did not help. And I think it actually made it worse because I think part of my takeaway as a young person at this time was like, oh my God, what is it about me that, not even therapy can help me? What does this mean? And I think that this actually like made it worse because one of the byproducts that I now know about going through relationship loss is the impact on your self-esteem and self-concept and shame, right? And so this did not make that better. But I thought it was me. Then years passed, and I will also tell you, because I didn't know what to do with this, I was not in a good place for years after that. I mean, I was well into college before I started figuring things out. But honestly, even after I met my husband and we moved into that, I still had residual stuff coming up from the really awful relationship experiences that had been part of like my formative experience. So like like stuff stuck. And, but life goes on. And, I, over the years, had a number of other experiences. It's a different origin story, but decided to go back to school to be a therapist. And part of the motivation was really to be able to help people specifically with relationships. Like that was really important to me. I became a marriage and family therapist, did a lot of couples counseling, also individual therapy. And as a couples counselor and therapist, people would show up dealing with heartbreak, like wanting my help with that. Or as a couples counselor, the reality is that first, there are many things that can be done to improve relationships if both partners are willing. And it's also true that not all relationships can be repaired or should be repaired, actually. And so not uncommon for me to have one person on the therapy couch who was heartbroken, right? And I did everything that I knew how to do as a therapist in my efforts to help them. And then it dawned on me that it wasn't really helping them, and that they were actually having the kind of experience with me that I had had with my own personal therapist many years ago. And of course, this really bothered me. This was not good enough, I felt like I was failing my clients and that they deserved better. And so this sent me on a journey. I started doing research, digging into scientific journals, certainly psychology, but also it carried me into different fields, including biology, evolutionary biology. I had the great pleasure of connecting with Dr. Helen Fisher, who recently, I think last year, she passed away. But if you Google Dr. Helen Fisher, and the research that this woman did on what's really going on in people's brains, actually, and bodies during relationship loss, fascinating. This wound up turning into a book, Exaholics, Breaking Your Addiction to an Ex-Love. But more importantly, it turned into a way of helping people who were showing up, wanting to help through this that I did not have before. So a more structured system, a process that I was able to use with my own clients, certainly. But, as my practice grew, I have 50 plus therapists running around here these days and really pivoting more into clinician education, I was also able to be teaching therapists on how to do this differently in order to help people really move through this experience instead of just spinning their wheels for years and years. And so this is a passion area for me, and I'm pleased to say that after many years of research and experimentation and teaching this to therapists and seeing what happens, like we have a very different system for helping people move through this that is very different from conventional therapy. And just to give you a quick overview of like what is really going on, and then we'll dig into this more deeply. So I'll teach you like how to use some of these. But what the research uncovered and what the system is based on is the fact that there are actually 9 stages of healing after relationship loss, and there is work that needs to be done in each of these stages. And if it doesn't get done, you really can't progress on to the next. And that's why people get stuck, and that's why they kind of spin. It's like talking about the same thing over and over isn't helping me. Like, no, it's not. And so we have people all the time coming into our practice and being like, I've been in therapy for 2 years. I'm still here. Let's do this differently. And so, that feels really good for me because I think that we have earned the trust of people to help them not just get over a breakup, right? But actually turn this experience into a growth moment, because it's more than about just healing after a breakup. That feeling, that like certainly that is a huge part of it. But like what I'm always excited about is what's on the other side of this in terms of what did you learn about yourself? What will you do differently next time? How do you want to rebuild your life in who you are now, right? There is such an opportunity for growth and learning that benefits people, not just in their next relationship even, but in their own ability to be a healthier, happier, more resilient human, not despite having gone through this, but actually because of it and because of doing this work. So anyway, that is what I want for you, because you deserve that. And also what happens, just in reality, people who don't get that is that they can actually stay stuck. Like me, 5 years later, not really that okay. So what we're going to do today, we're going to begin talking about what this is, and we're going to start with stage 1. So I'm going to show you like what is really going on the inside that is contributing to this very first like awful place that you might be in. You signed up for this training on, how do I stop thinking about this? How do I stop obsessing about my ex? And that is a core feature of the very first stage of relationship loss, which is this withdrawal stage. And so here's what's really going on. This is not just you, okay? Nature built all of us to bond, to form very powerful attachment bonds to other humans, parents and children, but also romantic partners. This is part of how human beings are actually designed. We are designed to do this. And we have like machinery inside of us that exists for this purpose. Our limbic brain, our endocrine system, our physiology is wired to do this. And the way that it does this is through, believe it or not, an addictive process. Now, we think of addictions in a negative sense, and they are absolutely that when it is a addiction to an illicit substance or a harmful behavior. But what I was fascinated to learn through my research is that the reason why things like opiates or stimulants are physiologically addictive to humans is because of this hard wiring we all have inside of us for bonding. So these substances are actually hijacking these positive systems in a very intense way that leads people to essentially become attached to these substances rather to other humans. But the addictive process that underlies attachment bond formation is using the same circuitry. And when I connected those dots, I was like, whoa, but it makes a ton of sense. And also that this is rooted in our survival drives, because it is so crucial for human beings to be connected to other humans. When you think about an isolated human's ability to exist alone in the natural world, no, that's not going to work. We were evolutionarily, hundreds of thousands of years, we developed in the context of a collective and a family unit, right? And so because this goes so deep, wolf pack deep, gorilla tribe deep. It is happening in a different part of our brain. And this is connected to our survival drives. And so when we go through a relationship loss, even now, even though our intellectual mind knows that, like, I'm not actually going to die because I'm not connected to this person, like maybe even this is not even a good person, like they cheated on me. Like, why am I losing my mind over this person? It is because of that nonverbal attachment bond, that this is something that is happening so much deeper than is accessible through your conscious mind. And it triggers like all of the survival crisis stuff because your body thinks that you are in danger. And so because of that, nature demands that you reconnect, like whether or not this is a healthy, satisfying relationship is actually less important to nature in terms of your ability to continue living, right? And so what happens that is so confusing for people is that there are all kinds of things going on in their bodies and minds and brains and emotions that are driving for this reconnection over and over again, that may or may not have anything to do with whether that's actually a good idea for them, because it's not coming from your thinking brain, it's coming from your body. And so this is always true when an attachment bond is abruptly severed, even if they were cheating on you, even if they were emotionally abusive, even if you don't have anything in common, even if you have a total values discrepancy, or, honestly, like it's a known thing that people in patently abusive relationships often go back over and over and over again, because what's happening isn't connected to logical thought at all. So that is the first thing to know. And in my experience, many people are like, oh, that's interesting, because I think prior to that, can be confusing. Like, why? That, like, this doesn't make sense. I don't want to be thinking about this. I don't want to be attached to this person. There are all these good reasons why I shouldn't be, yet I am. And so, like, I just wanted to validate that. It's not just you. It's actually how we're all designed. And so let's go a little bit deeper, because, okay, the elephant is a representation of like this really powerful natural force. And it actually does extremely specific things to us to drive us back into connection. And because love is an addictive process, it is reminiscent of what happens to people who are in actual withdrawal from substances. It changes the way you think, it changes the way you feel, and it changes the way you behave. It essentially reorganizes everything to prioritize reconnection, because thinks you're going to die. So what this happens in terms of your thoughts turns into obsessive thinking about your ex, intrusive thoughts over and over again. Even if you don't want to, even if it doesn't make sense, your brain is still going to do that to you. It also makes you crave contact, like want to reach out, or I just need a closure conversation, or I need to return their toothbrush, right? Like there's all kinds of things. Like if we talked, there's this desire to reconnect that might not make sense logically, but it's still there. But additionally, there's also this propensity towards compulsive actions, like you do send that text, you do, or reply to it. You maintain contact with them, even if, it's not a great idea for you to do that. There's this compulsion to do so. And this is very consistent with other addictive processes, by the way. Someone going through a drug addiction will also experience all of these things. It'll be alcoholism, addiction to opiates, like intrusive, obsessive thinking about the substance that they are attached to, a craving for it, and then also compulsions to do it, compulsive actions to reconnect. So let me show you a different thing. This is also something I came across. It made a ton of sense to me. And I think that this is a nice model for really understanding it. So in this picture, we have this big, powerful elephant and this little human rider sitting on top of it. And this is basically, honestly, more so even just than relationship loss. This is actually a diagram of the human brain. I mean, most of our brain function is not actually connected to conscious thought, our ability to make informed decisions or visualize things like that is represented by the human sitting on top of the elephant. That is our thinking mind, the one that makes good choices and plans, right? The rest of our brain is this elephant, this limbic brain, and it is very, very powerful. Like a human sitting on top of an elephant. Like if that elephant wanted to go do something else, that human is not going to be able to stop it. And that is very true about the way that our brains work. And so then what we need to do is get that rider back in control, get that rider and elephant working together, going in the same direction, and then it's beautiful. But many times there is an opposition between your thinking mind and this other very powerful part of yourself, particularly when it comes to relationship loss. And so things to know about this elephant brain, this powerful part of you. It lives in the dark, meaning that it is not conscious. It is not a thinking part of your brain. It is a feeling part of your brain. Now, this part will like bubble stuff up. It will turn into thoughts when it wants you to do something. It will turn into feelings when it wants you to act, but it is not accessible really through an intellectual type of process. And also, unless you are aware of this and managing it really intentionally, it will run the show. And so I just wanted to put this in front of you because, you came to me for help today with things like, what is going on? How do I feel more in control of myself? How do I stop thinking about this? And we need to, first of all, help you see what is actually happening. And I really want to give you strategies for how to begin managing this, because this is just the very first stage of relationship loss, but it is crucially important. If you don't have a system for managing this, not only can you not move on to the next phase of healing, which is actually more bringing that thinking brain online and starting to get clarity about the relationship. That is the next step. But you cannot do that while you are being almost assaulted by all these thoughts and feelings that create a lot of confusion. And additionally, it's so important to do this work because when people don't really understand what's going on and they don't have access to their other parts of their brains or those, the thinking process, like making values-based choices, et cetera, what you'll see is breaking up and getting back together again, even in toxic relationships or having these reunion fantasies that are often not really based in reality, but that keep people stuck. There can also be this quasi-situationship purgatory thing where you're not really together, but you're kind of hooking up sometimes, or you're still talking, and you cannot move on if you're in that space. And I think what I have seen that is hard to see, but is also very common, is just people making choices that are coming from this elephant brain. That is the one running the show, but they are doing things that they wind up feeling badly about, tolerating bad behavior from this person that they should probably let go of, continuing to be in a sexual relationship with an ex, being in a, it's really hard, is being the other person, maintaining a relationship with an ex or somebody that they're attached to who's married. This can look like so many different things. But anyway, it's difficult, and it's vitally important to have ways of managing this. So one of the strategies that I teach in my heartbreak recovery program and that I want to share with you today is related to how to start getting back in control of this. Now, this is only one facet. This is multidimensional. I mean, I spent an entire unit of my Heal from Heartbreak program, doing deep dives into all of this stuff with a number of different strategies to become grounded. But this one is really powerful, and you can start using this today. And so there are 4 steps here. The first step is to be aware of what's happening. And I hope that this conversation has helped you generate some of that awareness. Additionally, the next step is just to name it. What is this? Then you can soothe it physiologically and then commit to taking congruent, values-based action that helps you stay in a grounded, good place. So let's try this together for just a second. And so this is going to be interactive, okay? I want you guys to take a couple of minutes and do this with me. And the very first thing I want you to do is I want you to think about how this shows up, this subconscious, powerful drive that might show up like an obsessive thought, a feeling, a craving for contact, maybe even a compulsive action. But I want to hear when this is active for you, how is it most likely to show up? I'm going to wait for your responses in the chats. I can see them right here. The obsessive thoughts, okay. Reunion fantasies. Yep, you are not alone in that one. Yep. Oh, the physical sensations. That's really good awareness. Like when I was going through this, it felt like a knot in my solar plexus, that like your rib cage area. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and it hurt, physically hurt. I'm glad that you have that awareness. Okay, so many good things. All right. Now, the next piece of this is to name it. So, going back, so you were mentioning that feeling. What would you say is the name of that feeling? If you had to attach the name of an emotion to that, is one way of labeling this. Or also, so you mentioned having obsessive thoughts, reunion fantasies. What is it specifically? What are you thinking about? Is it a statement? Is it a fragment of a memory? Is it an image? How does it show up? Or if it's a behavior, so yeah, you shared that you are continuing to engage, right? Okay, so maybe that is the name of how this shows up for you. But by naming things, we clarify, and we can be like, oh, wait, I know what this is. So what's the name of it? Sadness, okay, longing, hurt, anger, good. Oh, yeah, rehashing the conversation. Yeah. Oh, and that's interesting. So Jeff shared trying to figure out why, right? Trying to close the loops and figure out what happened here, at the time. And that is often, that is absolutely common in that stage one of this work. It's trying to find answers for things that you don't have answers to, that don't totally make sense. And I'll just tell you, it's common. It can be part of that obsessive thinking pattern. And in my experience, those questions are typically not fully answered until stage 6 of this work. That there's a lot of the emotional processing that needs to happen before you have access to all of the information. I know that might sound weird, but there's a process. There is a process. I've just seen it time and time again. So valid, absolutely. And perhaps even just knowing that, this is part of my experience right now. And by doing this work, I will have all the answers. And I need to move through the process. Might be a nice reframe for you. But then the last phase here is committing. And this commitment is related to getting your thinking brain back on line, right? That rider. So even if the elephant is in a different place, tapping in to that part of your wise mind and committing to what they know to actually be in your best interest. And so this might look like a self-care behavior. This might look like tapping into motivation to continue moving down this path in an organized way, like for you, Jeff. It might look like knowledge around what not to do to like, because if I did that, it's gonna make it worse. And so like if you're currently engaging in those compulsive behaviors, maybe you are engaging with your ex in a way that you know is really not good for you. It might be commitment to finding a way to stop that by doing the work of stage one. And so again, in the first module of this program, that's what we're doing is putting together a whole action plan that is multidimensional. So, how to not make this worse? What is your self-care plan? What is your action plan? And it's really based on ideas from acceptance and commitment therapy, which is being able to have and acknowledge feelings and then make choices about what to do so that we're starting to disconnect the way we feel from how we choose to behave, because feelings are something that tend to go away or be resolved, I should say, further on in the process. But you can get your wise mind and your behaviors back online first so that you can take care of yourself, become grounded, and start being able to do the work that happens in later stages of this. So, okay, so let me hear some commitments. So self-care, things to do, things not to do, things to be reminding yourself of, motivating statements. A commitment to doing the work, fantastic. Love the self-care, yeah. Breathing, meditation, exercise, good one. Yep. Cat petting, absolutely, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I know it's, and thank you for being so, Courtney just shared, not getting roped in to spending time with them. Yes. Yeah. And these things are hard to do when you're first practicing, particularly if that elephant has been very powerful, the obsession, the craving of contact. Like if you're in that place, it can be hard to control. And so please be patient. Like this is just one tiny little exercise. And for most people, it requires typically weeks of work. And that is with the support of a structured program that moves them through it much more quickly. So, I mean, like, talking about this in therapy isn't really going to change this. But please be gentle with yourself and understand that this is a process, that there are many pieces here. I don't want you to be mad at yourself, Courtney, if you intend to commit to this action and then in the moment are overpowered by this elephant. It's going to take more work. And it is also true that by committing to small things that are steps forward, you can begin to build back that ability to have your wise mind running the show rather than that elephant that might be dragging you into situations that aren't good for you. So I just want to say that. Okay, so with that in mind, now I really want to make sure that we talk about this very important part. So I might scroll ahead just a little bit. Okay, so one of the things that is very important to know, just like I keep talking about these stages of healing, and I want you to understand what these are, but I also want you to be thinking about where you are currently in this process, and particularly for those of you who tried to take that assessment I put together for you and didn't get access to the responses. This is going to make things clear for you. So to run through this quickly, there are 9 stages of healing. And if you think about 9, it can feel kind of overwhelming, but really it's like 3 phases. The first phase is all about managing the elephant and getting your thinking mind back in control. The second phase is by tapping into that deeper emotional work. And then the third phase is really rebuilding, rediscovering yourself and kind of moving forward. So it's, I think, less overwhelming when you think about it in those 3 chunks. But the reality is that these are different levels that you need to work through, and you have to do the work of each of these in order to do the work of the next. Like, for example, we were just talking about if the elephant is running the show, you cannot do the work of relationship clarity, and so on and so forth. I'm going to talk you through these, how they work together, and be thinking about where you are in this process. Because when we get to the end of this, I'm going to ask you where you are currently. So think about what number you're in. Okay. So first of all, this withdrawal phase, we've just been talking about that. And the goal of this is to really become more self-aware, like to recognize what's going on, but also to stabilize, right? Like to feel more in control of yourself, your actions, your thoughts, what you do. And it's like, I am going to get grounded. I am going to not make this worse. My thinking brain is going to be back online. And that is the goal. So that is the only goal. It is not the alpha and the omega, and I'm healed and free to, move on. Like, no, this is just like step one. Step two is to get true relationship clarity. And now this might surprise you. And I hope that this is okay to talk about because, we're here to heal from heartbreak. And the reality is a lot of people who are in the space that you're in do not know for sure about the future of their relationship, which might sound weird, right? I mean, even if you've broken up, there can be very real and legitimate questions. And I'm telling you this as a marriage counselor that sometimes people do break up, divorce even, do work, and then get back together again. And it is better. And the relationship can be what you want it to be. And I will always help people figure out if that's possible and then craft a plan to reconciliation. I mean, I'm a relationship person. That is what I do. And so the work of this next stage is to get clarity around, is this really over? And there are two doors at the end of this stage. One might be reconciliation. Maybe you do try again. And so in the program that I teach, there is a structured pathway for how to do that. First, how to assess, like, is that a good idea? But then if so, how do we do that? And like what is the pathway for couples that do want to try again? So instruction around that certainly. But if not, then the goal is to create that true clarity so that you're not stuck in that place where you're having reunion fantasies or that what ifs or those kinds of things. Because until you have that clarity, you cannot move on to the next phase of this where you start creating closure. If in your mind you might get back together, you cannot create closure, and you need to create this. And this is something that you do through this program, right? It is, how do I set different boundaries? How do I start closing the doors? And like making this real, because without that, there's this things that are happening that will maintain that attachment bond. And this can be really hard to do, not gonna lie. One of the reasons why this is very hard to do for people, why people typically do need support in this, like unfollowing a social profile or deleting a contact, is because as soon as you do this, it makes it real and it pushes you into the next phase of this, which is grief, honestly. And I think about it, because if you're still maintaining contact and like reunion fantasies, not only are you gonna like stay in that place, but it actually shields you from experiencing grief. You don't feel as badly when you're still kind of connected to them in their mind, but when you shut that door, you will start to experience pain in a different way. And this is a good thing. It really is, because it gives you the opportunity to do deep grief work, honor your losses, multidimensional losses, but then also the emotional processing component that is honestly required for you to be able to move into even deeper and more powerful pieces of this, believe it or not, including what comes up next. I mean, grief, sadness can actually mask a lot of dark emotions that are very important and very valuable. Things like anger, resentment, guilt, fear, regret, like shame, this is oftentimes for people in my experience directly on the other side of grief, and to get support and like, what do I do with that? Right? Like, not just churning in anger or regret, but like, how do I use this productively in a way that benefits me? And so this is emotional processing. In this module, we're working through the feelings and certainly helping to manage them and put them to rest is one of the goals. But it's also understanding, what is this telling me, and how is this actually valuable information, so that you can move into the next stage of this, which is learning and growing. For example, when you tapped into your anger in stage 6, at anger, it was like, you were not treated well. And in stage 6, we turn that into, how might I set healthier boundaries for myself in the future, right? It takes the lessons that came from the dark emotions and turn it into an actionable plan for you. And this is the stage where people dive into, okay, what really happened in this relationship? What was I doing on my side of the equation that maybe I might want to do differently going forward? How do I not get into this kind of situation again? But also, what was really going on with my ex that contributed to my experience of them? Right? We were co-creating this. What parts were they managing? What parts were my responsibility? And not for the purpose of blaming anyone. Like, that is not the goal here. The ultimate goal is to help you get clarity around your own process of growth and development, to create an action plan that's going to move you forward, to really get valuable, like, what did I learn from this? Insights. You'll understand yourself better, your own patterns and relationships. But interestingly, I have found that when people do this part of the work, then and only then are they able to move into mental and emotional freedom, which I think is the ultimate goal. I mean, you signed up for this coaching call because you were like, help me stop obsessing about this. And so, good news and bad news. The good news is that there is a productive path that will help you attain this step by step. It is reliable, it works, but this is not a light switch that you can flip off. It is having to do the work of these different stages so that when you get to this stage, there's nothing to think about anymore. You have done the work. You have extracted the life lessons. You understand what happened. Jeff, you're not still trying to close those loops, right? Like, you know. And at this point, you have also done the emotional processing work that is needed to be able to, like, let this go once and for all. And this requires a different kind of work, believe it or not, at this point, which is developing cognitive strategies that you'll learn in this program. But like, so how do I manage this? And so there are a variety of different facets here. But the goal is to get to a place where you don't have to think about this anymore, and you are genuinely free, and you do not have the same kind of feelings. There might always be a twinge of sadness, right? And that will fade over time. But in terms of that, like, emotional intensity, you're going to be way on the other side of that once you do the work of this module. Okay, so then after this, and only after this can people really do the work of, and I love this. This is intentional life design. And this is where you go into, okay, what did I learn about myself through every stage of this, right? Like the lessons, what happened, the story, how I cope with emotions, right? Like, how did I develop my abilities to manage things differently, and turn that into a new chapter, really, of self-exploration. Because when we are in intimate relationships, particularly long-term ones, our identities become intertwined with our partners. And this is not a bad thing. This is just what happens. But when we move out of relationships, we have got to go through a process where we are reconnecting with ourselves in an intentional way. Like, who am I now? Who am I independent of my life with this person? And it requires productive work to tap into that, because in relationships, it's actually really easy to get disconnected from that. But when you do this work and through this program, you will regain that sense of yourself, but also get support in crafting a plan, right? And so in this module, we're working on multidimensional things. So career, your social life, how to handle friendships, reconnecting with hobbies, reconnecting with your relationship with yourself, honestly, is a big piece of this. But also like making choices, like, do I want to move? Like what's next for me? And developing a life vision that feels really good. Now, I will also just say, it is absolutely okay to stop here and design a life that you feel great about, that does maybe not include jumping into another relationship right away. I think our culture can prioritize relationships, and you do not have to buy into that if you don't want to. It's absolutely okay to be happy and single, and you're going to get a lot of clarity for how to create that in Module 8. But if your desire is to be in a healthy new relationship, and that's really what you want, in that last module, Module 9, we're going to be diving into how to love again in a healthy way that includes, what did I learn? How do I not do that again? But also really like, how did this develop my ability to trust myself? What do I need to do to be able to trust other people again, particularly if I was hurt or traumatized in this past relationship? More clarity around how to get into a new relationship, to be able to maybe see red flags or potential problem areas that you might have missed in this last one, but also more clarity around what it is that you're moving towards now as a result of doing this work. So this can also be very exciting and empowering. So let's just talk a little bit about where you feel you are currently in these stages, now that I've lined them out all for you. And I know okay, let me just check in with you guys. Lots of ones. Yeah, fair. Mm-hmm. Oh, and let me just tell you, a lot of times, and I'm seeing some of the responses, people are like, I'm in all of them. All of them are true for me right now, which is valid. Like, before you do the work of one stage, these are all like open, right? You might feel a lot of these things all at the same time. And in reality, when you do the work of one stage, it's kind of like you close that door behind you. And so I want you to think about the earliest stage that feels active. So if you just said 1 through 5, I see that. Okay, 1 through 5, that means you're in stage 1. And that is the work ahead. When you do that work, we're going to close that door, and they'll be like, okay, I'm in stage 2 now. I can see that. And so that is how you kind of move forward. And also, I think it is true that this is absolutely, like, you cannot advance until you do that work with the one stage. However, it's not always linear. Like, I think as you develop, there might be times where you kind of go back into a different phase, spend a little bit of time, that move forward again. But the thing about this is that you will always know where you are in this work. It's not vague. And I think that that's something that I hear frequently from people who are just trying to do this with traditional therapy. And it's not the fault of the therapist either. I mean, they don't know. I didn't know, right? I mean, very well intentioned. But in conventional therapy, what are we doing? We're dropping in week to week, and your therapist's like, hi, how are you? And you're like, and talk about the things, right? We go back into the past. We're kind of all over the place. And many people are like, okay, so I just free associated for 45 minutes, but how is this moving me forward? And I think oftentimes it's because there's not clarity, like, where in that process, what is the kind of work that you're doing right now? Is this the right time to be doing this? Let's move you back. And also remember that a therapist will only follow you. Therapy is non-directive. In my therapist hat, we're not going to talk about anything. We're going to talk about whatever you want to talk about. I am here to listen, to be responsive, to follow you wherever you think you want to go. If you ask me what I think you should do, I'll be like, well, what do you think you should do? Because that is my role as a therapist. I can't share. And so I think that also can be a disconnect here between what people often want and are hoping to get out of typical therapy. Like, yes, it absolutely, especially in the very early stages of this, like, I'm just going to come into your office and I'm going to cry and then I'm going to leave. And that's great. And if you need to use therapy as a container to do that, perfect. But I think that many people also do want a therapist to be providing some leadership around, okay, here's what's going on. Here's what to do next. Here's where you are in this process. Here's what will move you forward. Having no idea that that is literally what therapists don't do. That's what coaches do. Now, we have a new problem if you go out looking for a coach, because anybody can call themselves a coach. That's a whole other bag of worms. So, like, ideally, you're looking for a qualified, licensed mental health professional who specializes in not just coaching, but heartbreak recovery coaching, and who is familiar with what I'm talking about and who can effectively help you navigate this process. But okay, thank you for sharing all of your commentary and self-awareness around where you think you are. And I'm seeing lots of ones, lots of twos, but also a lot of people sharing that they are also, and I'm also angry. Like, valid. Of course you are. Yeah. So, all right. So let's get back to this. Okay. And now we have just a couple minutes left, and I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for Q&A. Okay, so very, very briefly, why people get stuck. This is what I want you to be, like, taking away and actively avoiding as you leave this training, okay? In addition to practicing that, like, awareness, name it, soothe it, commit skill, this is where we go next. And the biggest mistakes, there are 4 of them. And here's the first one. It is... So in that, like, intense, like, I'm obsessing, I'm craving, I just want to make it stop, and trying to jump to stage 7, which is that mental and emotional freedom stage, that people are like, I'm going to leapfrog over all the work, and I'm just going to try to not think about this anymore. And they become frustrated because they can't stop. Or sometimes there are strategies to, like, avoid thinking or feeling that aren't that healthy. So substances, other unhealthy behaviors, but even, like, withdrawal behaviors, like lots of Netflix binging, right? It's like getting overly busy. And that is actually another thing here. Like, people who are jumping from that, like, super intense, painful stage 1 into 8. I'm going to redesign my life. I'm going to get super busy. I'm going to move. I'm going to be a veterinarian now. Like, throwing themselves into something as a distraction, like a way to get away from all the pain of number 1, but making oftentimes major life decisions without having gone through first all the work of healing. So right, they're trying to get away from something by just, like, filling the space, but also the choices that they do make are reactive, and they don't come from this, like, deep, what did I learn about myself work. They're more like, maybe if I move to Florida, I won't feel this way anymore, like that kind of thing. And then, now related to this, of course, too, are people who attempt to move from stage 1 to stage 9, where we are getting into new relationships as a way of trying to make the pain go away. And this creates problems in new relationships that we'll talk about here just in a second. But these are 3 big problems that I see people make. And then the 4th thing is the 4th mistake can be going into traditional therapy without the awareness and the support that you are getting through today's coaching call with me. Because what a therapist will always do, what I did when I was operating in this space, is they will take you from, you're melting down, you're feeling so bad, and a therapist will be like, let's process the grief, right? And therapists are great at this. Like, you will cry, you will talk about the things that happened, there will be, like, the feelings, right? We're going to go into the past, and there is definitely a place for this, like, that needs to happen as part of this process, but that is not the only thing that needs to happen. And so if a therapist doesn't know that, it can be a lot of, like, processing, but then, like, now what, right? And that's that stuck part. Or, and this is hard to say, but you deserve to have all the information. Sometimes well-meaning therapists who are trained in clinical mental health, like psychotherapy is for the purpose of diagnosing and treating mental health conditions, right? Psychopathology is that a therapist, when you continue to be stuck and grieving and feeling bad, and they're trying what they know how to do, and you're not really improving, a therapist would be like, okay, so like, what does this mean about you? And I think that that's what my therapist was doing to me back in the day. It was like, okay, so how is this connected to, your parents' divorce or having a critical father, or maybe there's like attachment issues going on. Like, what are the deeper issues that are making it so hard for you to move on? When in reality, literally every human going through this experience is going to have to move through all of these stages. Maybe you do have major depressive disorder or unresolved trauma. And in that case, clinical mental health treatment is going to be part of your process. Like, that needs to be handled. But to connect with a therapist who is just going there and trying to pathologize this because they don't really know what's going on and don't know how to move you forward, that is not good enough. And it can contribute to these feelings of like shame, right? Like, what is wrong with me that therapy isn't helping? So I just wanted to put that on your radar in case you're having that experience, because yeah, there's more here for you. But I think that the big takeaway and what I want to leave you with, and we'll move through this fast, is that it's more than just about getting over your ex. This is a huge opportunity for you to learn and grow and do really important and powerful work. Like, what does this make possible for me because of what you're going through? And I want to acknowledge the fact that you didn't sign up for this. You didn't want to do this work. Maybe you feel like you got pushed into the pool, and here we are. You have all this stuff coming up, and this is a fantastic opportunity to use this as a very special and important and powerful time in your life where not are you just like getting over this attachment. It is a time to work on yourself in a productive way, and to also be thinking about like, you don't have to do this, but then what are you choosing? So for example, like, there are risks for not doing this work. If you're like, yeah, I don't want to do this, I'm just going to, I really do actually just want to jump to stage 7 or get into another relationship again. That baggage is going to come with you. Or being stuck in the past for years, like I was, right? I mean, like, this isn't going to go away. Also, even if you do get into a new relationship, you're going to repeat the same patterns because you didn't do that work of like figuring out what those were, what you need to do differently. But also, and I've seen this, it is sad, honestly, is like people being emotionally unavailable. I have worked with people who got married, had kids, bought real estate 10 years down the line, and they are still carrying a torch for their ex that is interfering with their ability to really be connected to their spouse. I mean, who is a very nice person who deserves their love and respect. So you don't have to do this work, but I think you should at least consider it. Okay, so now, how to do this. What is the path forward? And then we're going to go to Q&A. So I'm going to give you a couple of ideas, and then we're going to talk about you. But so the big thing that I've learned through all the years of doing this is that this is multidimensional. This is such a huge, like, fork in the road moment for people. It's such an emotional time. It can be confusing. There's so many different things that really need to happen. And so that is why in my practice, where I landed in terms of how I want to serve people has 3 different dimensions. One-on-one sessions, like that support, talking through your things, talking about your situation, getting feedback, having that relationship and that place to do some of the emotional processing is very powerful and important. This is oftentimes supported by a support group. So, like in my practice, oftentimes when people are doing one-on-one heartbreak recovery coaching, they're also plugged into a group where they're doing weekly coaching sessions, like so teaching on different topics, discussion groups, but also having access to a community, and this is facilitated, by the way. So, licensed therapist is involved with all of this, and it is, but also available, like it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Anybody else awake? Like, it can be really nice to be plugged into that just because this is such an isolating time. But I think the real thing that people must know is that this also requires some structure. And I just want to say this because a lot of times, and even to this day, like we'll have people showing up at Growing Self. They're in heartbreak. They're going through a divorce. They want help. And they're like, I just want to talk to someone. And you can absolutely do that with us. We can connect you with a heartbreak recovery coach and, just like start there. That is completely fine. And I think what people need to know is that there's more than just talking out loud for 45 minutes, that actually the real work of this happens outside of your sessions. And so that is why we have a complimentary program that's lessons with me, it's activities, it's like step by step, here's what to do today, like that kind of thing. Because the experiential component of like saying things out loud to a licensed therapist who specializes in breakup recovery coaching, that is important and valid, but that is not enough either. Right? It is, or it would take 3 times as long. And my goal is like, how can we get you through this as productively and as quickly as possible? Because you deserve that. So anyway, that's just a little bit about our system. I'm not even going to, so we call it the Academy. So this is the learning component, the growth collective is the group component, and then the experience is one-on-one sessions. Okay, the first step, and if you wanted to do this with us, the first step is just we have a little assessment, like what kind of support do you want or need? Totally no obligation. If you did want to work with us, it starts with a free consultation to meet with a breakup recovery coach, see if it feels like a good fit, and then decide. If you want to get involved with the support group or with the program, same. Sign up totally free, 7 days, do the stuff. You have full access to module 1 right now. So this QR code, let us know you want to do the Academy, full access to module 1, work through a lot of the lessons that I referred to at the beginning of this coaching call, totally free, and just see like, does this feel good for me? Do I want to do more of this? And if so, you can continue on with the program. You could get free access to the collective for a week too. Like, okay, what's going on in here? What's the vibe? Please do as my guest, just to see if this works for you. And so here's the QR code if you want to submit that form and just access everything totally free. Because I would like to support you. Okay, and just briefly, if you are in a relationship with a therapist that you like and that you feel connected to, it's totally okay to do parts of this to support your work with your therapist. And also, if you're like, no, I really just want to do a structured program, or I really just want to do a support group, also great. Like, you're not roped into all of the everything. Take what you need, leave the rest. This is for you, truly. Okay, but try everything, totally available on me. Now, let's talk about your questions. Okay, so you see here, okay, I'm going to scroll back because there's a couple that came up earlier. Okay. Yeah, okay, divorce with kids, great question. And I will say there are definitely complexities around going through a divorce, especially with children. And in several of the modules, we cover aspects of this. Now, this program is about heartbreak recovery, which is how do I put myself back together again? How do I learn? How do I grow? How do I move on? And all of the everything related to navigating a divorce with children is beyond the scope of this program. I have a different one, believe it or not, for that you will have access to down the road. However, we do cover fundamentals of divorce with kids in several of these modules. And of course, for those of you listening who are not in that situation, there's so many lessons here, and if some of them aren't relevant for you, pick and choose what you need. But we'll go into what if you work together? What if you go to school together? What if you own a business together? Some of those complexities are super real, and that you deserve to have guidance to navigate them. Yeah. Okay. All right. Dealing with regret for not having ended this sooner. Yes, I hear that a lot. And I spend a lot of time in Module 5, where we're going into the dark emotions, talking about regret specifically, how to deal with that, how to learn, believe it or not, from that. And then also in Module 7, the next step is related to forgiveness, not just for yourself, but oftentimes forgiveness for ourselves can be a big part of this too. And so rest assured that you will have that. Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm so sorry. Listen, I'm aware of the time, and I have a hard stop at 2 p.m. I run a coaching certification program for licensed therapists, and I have to teach this class at the top of the hour, so I have to go. Listen, here's the QR code again, and I'll send these links in the follow-up email that you'll get hopefully later today to give you totally free access to everything that we've been talking about. Check it out. But whether or not you do this program, I so sincerely appreciate your spending this time with me today. I hope that it's given you some clarity about what's going on, why you feel the way you do, some practical exercises that you can do today to get more grounded and, at the very least, not make this worse. And then also some direction about what this looks like to move through, and visibility into where you are now and what you need to do in order to move forward. I hope that there's just clarity for you, because especially in such a confusing time, you deserve that. So anyway, here's the QR code if you want to get started with us, or if you just check things out. And again, thank you so much for spending this time. Check out the podcast, and we'll hang out again. All right. Take care.